This episode is sponsored by Bigger City. Thank you so much for supporting us and helping our show to grow. Hello and welcome to the Big Fat Gay Podcast. Ow! God. Where we talk about the things that are weighing on our minds. My name is Michael Willer. I'm a chubby chaser, and I just hit my ankle on my chair. And it hurts a little bit.
Oh, I thought it was your mind.
But that happens too from time to time. But we're rolling with the punches today because it's a Sunday, and it's a nice and chill Sunday, and I'm still having a good time.
Yeah.
Hey there, everybody. My name's Don. I'm a big chubby guy living here in sunny Hollywood, and today I am uninjured. We'll just leave it at that.
Fine work.
But for
fine
how
work,
long?
0 days without an accident. Hi, my name is Dan Oliverio, author, public speaker, and chubby chaser. And today I am a worked out work boy. I went to the gym before this and had a decent workout. Not a great workout, but a decent workout, a thoroughly respectable workout.
That's good. Respectable is good.
You make me aware of how much slacking you've been doing. Sorry, go.
Oh, please.
I'm Trevor Keyson. I'm a super chub, and today I'm a balanced snack boy. I had a slice of toast with some peanut butter and apple slices and some cheddar cheese. Ooh. And it's like I feel sated, but not like groggy. And I have some iced coffee, and it's a good time.
So much better than me. My balanced snack is usually a pint of Haagen-Dazs on a spinning plate.
That's one way to do it.
Is that because it's more efficient to eat it in a circle? Is that because
the centrifugal force keeps it from melting?
It's because I really like milkshakes.
I'm thinking this buzzsaw had like the buzzsaw effect, gnawing it down to the core.
Welcome to the show, everybody. We're all feeling good. We're back on Riverside, but we're going to do our very best not to have too much crosstalk, as we've been cautioned by our listeners.
Yes.
Thank you to our Patreon supporters on Patreon. Thanks very much for supporting the show, for helping us to pay for things like Riverside so that we can do this online. And thank you to Bearskin. I remembered them on the first try. Yay! A lovely affiliate of ours who are offering a 15% discount to anybody who uses our promo code, which is Trevor. What is it?
Big Fat Gay Pod.
What a shock. We were going for promo code FAT, but you know.
Yeah. Big Fat Gay Pod. All one word. I think, I don't know if it needs to be all caps, but I like big caps energy, like all caps energy for that.
Big caps energy. Also, thank you to Big Fig for being a longtime affiliate, and to Bigger City for sponsoring each episode. All of these people, all of you help us to keep the show going. So thank you.
Yay. Don and I are going to do a mini-sode. Don and I are going to get together and release for our Patreon listeners a mini-sode about the future in fat.
Or fat in the future.
Or fat in the future. Basically looking at sci-fi, how sci-fi has handled fat characters, or so what do fat people look like? Do they exist in the future?
And how it's changing.
Yeah.
I feel like the two Trekkies on the show talking about the future, there's got to be some Star Trek in there somewhere, right?
Oh, well, there'll be some Star Trek talk.
Don't worry. Our phasers will be on stun.
My phasers will be set to fun.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay.
Michael, set phasers to pop culture.
Set phasers to get the...
Am I the only person who hears quack quack whenever we hear that?
I hear it here with the horns. Yeah.
Hello.
Quack.
I am thrilled to set up this first pop culture piece from Deadline. Chris Farley biopic package heats up market with Paul Walter Hauser playing legendary comic and Josh Gad directing.
Yay.
No notes. There's a time in Hollywood where that, like, seeing Chris Farley biopic would send chills up my spine because it would be like Adam Devine in a fat suit.
Yeah.
Right. No, this is great. And the article so it's Deadline, which is a trade paper for the film industry. And the article about it, just sort of explaining what's happening and how they're pitching it, has not a single slimy fat comment in it.
Nope.
Even when talking about Chris and, his impact in comedy and his style of comedy and all of that. No. not a single slimy comment. This is really fantastic.
Well, I wonder how much that has to do with Josh Gad, a fat person, being the director and sort of helming the piece. It's based on a book, I believe. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
It's based on
The Chris Farley Show by Tom Farley Jr. and Tanner Colby.
Brother, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
Which is, I like that it's family. I mean, you can argue that either way, but it's
the family's already signed off on it.
Yeah, and that I think it's a sympathetic look. I certainly have my ideas about Chris Farley. I don't know that much about him, but I'm very curious to see the movie. I love seeing Paul Walter Hauser get some work for this. I love seeing fat people on screen as a subject, as a hero.
I'm very curious what it'll be like making a movie now, looking at the fat humor of the 90s.
Yeah.
Like I respect Chris Farley, but a lot of his humor back then was not something I was happy to
honestly
see at the time.
I couldn't watch it. I couldn't watch it.
I think it's a tough thing because from the little I know about Chris Farley, and this is taken mostly from a podcast that David Spade was a guest on, talking about his time. I mean, obviously they were friends and he knew Chris quite well, and they were in Tommy Boy together. And I get the sense that there was just, like a lot of comics and comedians, like this driving need to entertain people that at all costs, you must be funny. And I think that's probably where a lot of the drugs came from, but also the type of humor that he engaged in was like, what's going to make people laugh? Fat funny guy, and I think that's where a lot of us on our side cringe, but the general population thought it was hilarious.
I feel like a lot of fat people from that time, like I know I was able to look at Chris Farley and know where that humor came from. Like I know that ability to fit in, to be that funny fat guy, was one of the very valid vehicles to get acceptance in any sort of mainstream environment. The sassy fat guy, we've talked about that.
Yeah, you're fat, do your job.
Yeah. I think my only pause with this is like, I know it is going to be fat trauma, but I'm at least glad it is a fat director, a fat actor, and I like that it will make people who really just like, oh my God, Chris Farley was like the funny fat guy and he was so funny, and like that people who aren't fat will get a look into the layers of that and the kind of anguish and trauma that fueled that.
Oh my God. I just flashed back. Okay, this just hit me in an instant. This was probably 10 years ago at least, maybe more, probably 12 years ago. And my mom and my stepdad we were talking about old SNL sketches, and they were like, oh, we love Chris Farley. And this is like obviously pre-podcast, fat education, any of that stuff. And so they were like, oh, Chris Farley is so funny. He did this one Chippendale sketch. It was hilarious. And they're just remembering that time. Find it on, whatever app streaming. And were showing me, and I was just watching it like blank expression. And at the end of it, I mean, I think they kind of caught that I was just like not amused. And I wasn't trying to be a jerk, but I was also like, I just remember thinking like, what was funny about that? Like, is it just that he's fat and he's trying to be a Chippendales dancer? Is that it? Is that the whole joke?
That's the whole joke.
Basically the whole joke.
That's the whole joke.
And I just remember...
It should be said that in the skit, he and Patrick Swayze are competing shirtless to be Chippendales dancers. They can only hire one.
Yeah. So I just remember that moment where I think they kind of stumbled on just the bare bones, like we're laughing at fat people and that's funny. And then kind of tried to revisit it later and we're like, oh, maybe this doesn't hold up.
I feel like everything you said there is absolutely right. I'm not disagreeing with any of it, but I think it's also an unfortunate convergence of, at the time period, just about not every, but a lot of recurring SNL characters were just fish out of water character types, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That was the shtick. So like the Mary Kate character is that Catholic schoolgirl that's socially awkward that should never want to be a social media star. No, that's what she wants, There
were way too many sketches in which they didn't have a character, they merely had a behavior. And if it was a really popular behavior, they made it into a movie about a behavior.
And it was especially problematic Because I mean, at now it might just kind of get lost in the crash of everything going on. But back then, he was one of very few representations of fat people on television.
Yeah.
So growing up, like that became the pattern. Like what he offered was the pattern for how to be funny as a fat guy.
Yeah.
You know? And so a lot of us followed that trope.
I really wonder, I mean, I haven't read the book, but I'm very curious if they're going to address this stuff head on. Like, I feel like this...
How can you not?
I would hope so, yeah.
I think with that pair, like, I would have never thought of that pairing, but I think between Paul Walter Hauser and Josh Gad, I think, this is going to be a good movie, I think. Like
the article talking about the movie's concept also goes into a connection with Jim Belushi, which was the generation before him, or John Belushi, excuse me. Jim Belushi is the brother.
Yeah.
John Belushi, who was the Chris Farley of two generations
the 70s,
prior.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I with his connection to fatness also, I think it's unavoidable.
But next up, we got some more good news for everybody.
Is good, but also so complicated because there has been a lot of backlash.
Okay.
Which I will explain. So the news is Pokemon Go has updated their avatar system to you can actually just change your avatar's physical appearance now beyond being a thin sexy anime man or thin sexy anime woman with one hairstyle, and being before you could just kind of change the skin tone or hair color. And you could buy clothes for them, but now there is no gender to the avatars. You can select body types and faces, and you can be fat. Like I'll show. So you can
be kind of fat. You can be fat within the realm of reason, I would think, for a video game where customization is really hard to do when you push character models to their extremes.
So this is my old avatar in my Team Rocket Rainbow.
So Trevor is holding up an image of a sleek, streamlined anime character, and now he's showing us the fatter version, which is wider and thicker.
Which is literally just the same
around the
fat.
middle. I don't see much upper body fatness.
I'll take that. No.
Yeah, no, it's distinctly fat. It's
distinctly
not
fat. Yeah. It's not thin guy with a belly. It's good.
Yeah.
The backlash has been mostly negative.
Oh my God, really?
People are mad that they don't have their weird, sexy avatar anymore.
Why don't? Because they took away how the avatars used to look entirely and replaced it with this system, which can represent the old version somewhat, but it's not the same.
Yes. And they released this feature 10 years into the game. I mean, not 10 years, 8 years.
It's been a long ass time. It's been almost 10 years.
Yeah. Because it came out in 2016. So long time coming. But the problem is with I think it's great. I like that I can actually have an avatar that is closer to what I look like. Most of the positive feedback I've seen online has been from fat people oh my God. But people are mad that the faces are they are wonky looking. The feminine shapes are not as sexy in the traditional sense. And it's the problem with this update is it is the base level of a custom avatar system. So this is how it should have been when they released it, and they should have improved upon it.
Right. This is early development on a system that should have been much more fully fleshed out by this point in its life cycle. I'm curious how if Niantic is going to walk back any of their choices. That's what I'm wondering.
Mm-hmm. We'll see. Stay tuned for the Pokemon
if you feel
Go corner of the podcast.
We need an eagle to take us away from all this. Bat Watch 2024.
No, it's not an eagle this time. We're still in Pokemon land. It's a Spearow.
A Skarmory?
It was Skarmory. Yeah, that's better.
Dan.
That's scarier.
Dan, you're saying words, Dan.
It's very intense. Scream.
Coming in at high speeds. Cosmopolitan. We love Cosmo.
I like that this is in Cosmo. I think that's kind of pretty darn cool. This particular article entitled Sorry, reality TV doesn't deserve fat people. And it's basically lamenting the woman who wrote it, Megan Ray, is talking about how she had hopes that seeing more fat people on reality TV would sort of desensitize people and sort of get them more on board with like, oh yeah, there's just fat people in the world. And she's given up that hope.
Specifically, fat people on reality TV where their storyline is not about weight loss. So
that's true. That's true.
Like
not my 600-pound life. Yeah.
Yeah. So like fat people on reality TV, basically normalizing the existence of fat people, like on The Bachelor, like which, and as she points out in the article, it just never works. It just never is what you'd want it to be. The fat person always gets eliminated first.
That's what you get with tokenism. Like, who knows if it was because she was fat? She was one person on the show who was fat, who got eliminated. Right. And so we're never going to do that again because the fat person got eliminated. Maybe it was another reason. Who knows? If you're only going to do one person on any individual reality show, fuck you.
Yeah, And
the thing about reality shows, one thing they do reflect is a general impression by society. And guess what? Society doesn't particularly like fat people, and neither does reality TV.
I really got this article when I read this article, because whenever I'm at my lowest point looking at reality TV or TV in general, sometimes this is how I feel. Right. But I don't always feel this way. There are times where like, I do feel like that, just that little bit of representation, maybe it'll help.
But I think your point is well taken, Don. It's a sample size of one. Like there's one fat contestant. They're going to win the whole thing, or they're going to get eliminated. And they got a 50% chance of getting eliminated earlier.
I think the one type of reality TV that this article doesn't necessarily take into account, like this, it focuses heavily on like dating shows or shows like, I can't remember the name of it, but there was a show that was basically everyone creates like an online, like a social media profile. The Circle, right. Which is not, as she says, not technically a dating show, but still kind of about, whether or not you're going to catfish or be yourself. And I think it doesn't take into account shows like the Amazing Race, where it's a reality show because they have reality camera crews following people around the world. And it is kind of also a game show in that they're like solving challenges and doing puzzles, but they also focus heavily on like interpersonal drama between the pairs of people, but also between groups. And like there have been fat contestants on there, and I don't know that it's necessary. I think in that case, like that show feels to me like it has the least amount of like scripting or like forcing a dynamic like you see in a lot of reality TV where they're basically writing scenes for people to participate in, or they're editing it so heavily that it represents absolutely nothing real.
That's because in the example you give, there's a physical drama of like being out in nature, quite apart from the emotional stakes of so-and-so and so-and-so going to hook up.
Yeah. Right. So I guess kind of what I'm asking is like, there are different kinds of reality TV. And are we like, this article focuses heavily on like, like dating shows.
Really. I think just
romance
like courting
shows, relationship courting shows. Yeah.
I think I'm in agreement. Like, do not make some poor fat person be in a traditional, like, especially like, I don't know, The Bachelor, like don't put some fat woman in that situation of being the fat girl on The Bachelor and just kind of having people who like, I'm not a big reality TV person personally. And I think it's because it is like, it is creating a space for people to be too involved in other people's lives. And I feel like as fat people, there's already enough of that where it's like, if you are a fat person and you are like eating something in public, people are like, you shouldn't eat that. That has calories and calories make more fat. Did you know that? And it's like, well, like I'm literally just trying to eat something like, and go on with my day. Like, and then you put that on TV and then people are on Twitter being like, I can't believe so-and-so's eating
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
that's a really valid point, because like the whole like people reaching into my shopping cart and putting food back on the shelf. Like when I describe it to other fat people, they're like, oh, yeah. When I say it to a lot of like my straight themed friends, that all of a sudden we've crossed over into heightened reality of reality TV.
Yeah, they don't believe it, do they?
That happening.
They can't imagine a stranger coming out to you in a shop in a grocery store and taking something out of your cart, because
I've actually had people say to me like, that didn't happen to you.
Yeah.
Like, why would I make that up?
No, and so imagine, and I love Trevor's point here, just to reiterate, I love Trevor's point that when you put that on television and give people a comment space, I mean, you're like, they already are over authorized. They authorize themselves to comment in your life, but then you invite commentary in the comment section, and that's called ratings. Holy shit.
And then people also, you invite what might be a single reaction, like a solo reaction in the moment, and you force it into a group setting where it's dozens or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people all commenting together about the same event.
Well, yes. And also remember, reality TV is heavily edited so that there is a particular reality being showcased.
I mean, reality TV is manufactured, because I mean, I don't remember what episode this was, but the guy who I talked to who was casting the show that I don't think ever happened, with the fat people who are like a family who all work for the extermination company.
Oh, like 4 years ago.
Big Bugs Inc. Like, it's fat people, but they're like humans and they're a family. And it's like that is the level of manufactured things where it's like, they wanted me to pretend to be an exterminator to have people think fat people are humans.
Well, like, it's not even that. You don't even have to go that far. Like, having been in reality television, been on the other in front of the camera, I can assure you that some of the little games they play, for example, if they want to create a narrative where, let's say, the thin guy looked the fat woman up and down and looked disgusted, they can edit that together from, he looked at a plate of sardines and was disgusted, but they put it in the section there.
And then they put in that like shade music as it's like him looking.
Yeah. So they can create any sort of reaction between two people, because unless they are actually occurring in the same shot, remember, because it's usually edited back and forth, they can make up all sorts of things. Yeah. And I have direct experience of that.
I mean, it's the thing from 30 Rock, Michael, of you just have people with meaningful glances and put some music over it.
Exactly.
And you can create a whole moment that wasn't actually there.
Exactly. And they do that.
Even going so far, at least in the 30 Rock scene, having body doubles do something from a distance to make you think something happened that really literally never happened.
So basically, right now, I think when I look at reality TV, I have this reaction to it, as stated in this article, because I don't trust reality TV to show me a reality where reality is kind to me, right? Because they don't have a track record of that. They haven't earned my trust.
No. And they have a vested interest in making a story, and that story would upset the viewers if the fat person won.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, there's no way to really pivot from reality TV to our main topic.
Oh, I can. Let me just do it.
Dan.
We're okay.
Nipples.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, I guess that's technically a pivot. Sure.
Yeah, we're talking about nipples this week. You know, they're like opinions. Everyone has a couple of them.
Sometimes more.
Yeah.
They often come in pairs.
Yeah, and I think maybe the point to go off of maybe is nipples. We've all got them, and I personally feel like there are like two camps and very few in between of people who are all about like having their nipples touched, played with, abused, or people who it's like, don't go near my nipples.
Can I? Yes, I agree with that. Can I back up just one step from that for a moment?
Yes.
Because people might be thinking, why are they talking about nipples? I mean, yeah, everybody's got them, but why the hell is the Big Fat Gay Podcast talking about it? And what I'm about to say could be, I don't know, not controversial, but disagreed with. I think one of the reason that I think we're doing this, jump in if you disagree, is that, chubs and chasers, I think, I don't know about more than the average gay man, because I don't have sex as the average gay man, but we pay a lot of attention to nipple play. And sure, I guess, straights and other people do too, but there is something that comes up when you're with a chub and they have moves where the nipple gets, I don't know, I guess emphasized or at least drawn attention to more than if it's just regular, or is that nonsense? Am I just saying that because I'm a chubby chaser?
That makes sense to me in concept. I don't have any evidence necessarily to back that up, but yeah.
I would say as you get more towards like any kind of subculture or maybe kink, you get closer to nipple stuff because there's more things going on.
I think it's also more taboo because if there is somebody out there who's really into nipples of bodybuilders or really into nipples that are really tiny, that's one thing. But when it's nipples plus fat, it sort of enters a stigma, which draws attention to it one way or another.
Just because Dan said it, I feel I would be curious to know people, because I have known guys who have had small nipples and who are very self-conscious about it because
true.
I feel like there is, I don't know, there's a lot of stigma around, I guess, having big nipples. But I think also in the case of being in more like kink spaces, there is stigma around having like very small nipples.
I'm just going to offer up the flip side of that of like, I don't think nipples have to be consigned to the world of kink. I really do think nipples can live very happily in the world of the most vanilla of vanilla.
Oh, I think so too, but I'm not sure Trevor was saying that.
No, I mean like in the like that. I feel like the further you get, like that nipples, nipples are part of the world, everything, but I think the more focus like on nipples, I feel like happens when you get into kink spaces because there's more happening and nipples are part of that because they're part of the world.
I think maybe for me, I just associate with people who are into kink tend to be more free about their desires and what they want to engage in. So nipples, like that seems like it's like a handshake of kink, right? It seems like that's an easy place to go for kink.
Well, it should also be said that the other thing about nipples is that they have erectile tissue, that there is sensitive tissue there. And
it provides a visible response to the person engaging with them.
Well, but also a very internal response, like you know it. Not to say, like, personally, my nipples are kind of dead. Like, people want to like play with my nipples. I'm like, if you must.
Yeah,
it doesn't do much.
That's the third type. That's the third type.
It does not do anything for me. But as a chaser, I am aware that almost every guy I get with wants some degree of nipple play, and it's my job to figure out what that type is. And having a lot of, let's say, tricks in my bag, tools in my toolbox to best give the man pleasure, given what their taste is. Because I think too many chasers have like, well, there's hard and there's soft, done, and like, there's so much more.
So I have hooked up with a guy who has like the most helpful instructions about like, okay, this nipple, not that nipple, do this, but only to this degree. Like it is like, he has it down to a science of how he wants it. And it's like, that is actually helpful.
It is. But I would say that is a response to most guys he gets with being terrible listeners. And I don't mean listeners in the sense of like he's talking to them. I mean, you should be able, when you're with someone in bed, it's kind of like dancing. You should be able to anticipate and feel what they want, what they like, what's working, what's not working before they have to fucking say it.
I agree with Dan. Like, I want someone to take that moment to explore and find me. I'm going to out myself as I am someone who has sensitive nipples. I am someone who enjoys my nipples being played with as part of they are an erogenous zone for me, right? But if I have to tell you how to use them, that's actually kind of an active turnoff for me.
Yeah. I mean, most people are put off by having to instruct their partner, which is why it often doesn't happen. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't, because a lot of times your partner's just clueless and it would help them a lot. and it makes for better sex. But it's that listening with your body, listening body to body, that I feel is often lacking.
Well, I'm surprised to hear both your and Michael saying that you don't have an interest in nipples.
No, very much so. Very much so.
I have a huge interest in nipples.
Absolutely.
On my own body, I don't get much out of it.
Okay, so let's get to that, because what it sounded like to me is that both of you were saying like, meh, I don't get it.
No. I was saying quite the opposite, that I get it because I practice it, but please don't do it to me. I have no interest in that.
Yeah, it very much it would be like if somebody started sucking on my elbow. It's like,
yep. Oh my God, I've said the same thing. Same thing. Yes. Or sometimes I say earlobe. Like
right.
That's nice,
but earlobes.
Earlobe,
but
I get.
Do you have an erotic experience of sucking on a nipple?
Oh, me? Yeah, definitely.
Totally.
Oh,
absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, just not mine. Just don't do it to me.
Okay. So that's one of the things that I find interesting. So like, I have an erotic experience of someone sucking my nipples, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like most people.
It's physically pleasurable to me when they find it and they find the right way of doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do have a pleasurable experience of performing that as well, right? But I think if I found out the person I was doing it to had no experience, no pleasure in it, I think I'd lose interest pretty quick.
Well, that's how, I don't know about you, Michael, but communicating that to someone, because they all, like, a lot of chubs, like, they want to do stuff for you. And I'm like, really? You just showed up fat and hot and sexy. You're kind of done now. Let me do my job. I'm not saying just lie there. I'm just saying that, like, I don't have a checklist of things you need to do for me.
Yeah. I guess the way I would say that is that I'm not sitting there waiting for stuff to happen to me.
Oh, yeah, no.
And there are certain things that if that's kind of how it goes, like sucking on my nipples or playing with my nipples, it will just be sort of actively boring. Like there's literally no.
Yep.
There's just nothing there. I feel like what happens is that the experience grinds to a halt until we can move past the whole.
No, I have the perfect way, because for me, it's like, oh, you're going to suck my nipples, so we're taking a break now.
Yeah, that's the vibe.
And I'll come back when you're done.
I feel like a lot of people have interest in body parts that I will not have pleasure in them exploring, right? So like, I've been with a few guys who are very into like armpits, right?
Yep.
Like, okay, you want to sniff around, you want to do things in there? Okay, great. But like, so at what point do you say like, we're doing this for you and that's okay? Or do we just move past it because I'm not getting anything out of it?
I have a lot to say, but I don't want to interrupt somebody.
Well, going back to the like nipple, like, so I have sensitive nipples. I enjoy nipple play, but it's not my favorite thing. But like, I enjoy it. I've been with guys who are like, their thing is nipples, but like their nipples. And it's like, I don't like, that's why I found the one guy telling me like exactly what he wants with his nipples helpful. Cause it's just like, I'm bored because it's like I'm focusing on someone's nipples and it's just like, okay, like, is this hot? Am I done now?
Yeah, I want to get to Don's question because I think that was really interesting. But just to respond to Trevor, I have found in my semi-limited, but not that limited experience that every single person I've been with has had a completely different need when it comes to nipples.
Yes.
It is varied widely. And I have walked into the trap of going in too hard and being swatted for it. I've walked into the trap of not doing enough and the person not responding until I like literally biting. And I was like, I feel like I'm causing harm here, but he's into it. So, okay. And there's no way to really get that unless they either just tell you if they know, or you do a lot of experimenting and you could ruin the mood by experimenting wrong.
Well, at the risk of outing myself as the podcast slut, I will tell you from years and years of experience.
We're 178 episodes in. I think people know.
So look, here's the deal. Yes, you're absolutely right, Michael. I agree with you that people are extremely varied and nuanced with how they like to be touched in that region. And I enjoy the process of figuring out what it is that turns them on. And in answer to your question, Don, I'm not a fan of, and this is not a should, if people love doing this, if they have things, that's fine. But personally, I am not a fan of things that are not mutually erotic. I don't want to be there's nothing I need to do to somebody for me, because I could be alone and do that. If they're not enjoying it, or if they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. We don't need to do that. I have better ways I can A, find someone who does love it, or B, just do that in my head when I'm masturbating, or there's no reason to involve them in something they're not lit up about. So I make it a point for me to engage in stuff that they like and I like. Will I leave stuff off the table? Is it possible that I am not into stuff that they want and they like that? Yeah, that's possible. But my thing is, well, yeah, you can get that somewhere else, just like I can get stuff somewhere else. We don't have to, there should be, and there almost always is, a large overlap of what pleases us both, more than enough things to have a lot of fun with. In terms of Michael, where you're coming from with the like, well, how do I regulate that? I think I get a sense from how their body responds. In some cases, people respond ambiguously, like that, like when they're like, I'm like, is that pain? Is that pleasure? I can't tell. So I will simply say, is that good or is that not good? And they'll say, oh, like, that's really good. Or they'll be like, it's a little too hard. I'm like, great. And I can immediately modify, and their end of the interview is done. They don't have to instruct me. I just sometimes need a little bit of verbal conversation if I'm having trouble picking up on cues.
Yeah, I get that. I have learned how to communicate over the years. To Don's question, because I think this is an interesting thing, and I get both sides, and I don't know that I have a committed answer, because on the one hand, I'm with Dan, where if there's something that I need so desperately for myself and then the other person just isn't into it, yeah, like I wouldn't expect
put them
them
through it?
Yeah, I wouldn't put somebody through that. But I think there's also a degree of like how big it is. Like if it's something, are we going to spend 10 minutes doing this? Or is this just like a passing 30-second thing that I can kind of like, okay, yeah.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
I think there's variations and degrees that make it maybe not such a black and white answer. And that's an interesting thing, because I don't know, Don, what do you think? Like, you asked the question. Do you have a take?
I feel very much like what you just said, of just like, how much time commitment are we talking about? Is it something that actively puts me off, or is it something that I can just sort of go like, well, if it's a thing that makes you happy, then, and it doesn't put me off, then let's do for it, like using the armpit example. I have never been an armpit person. I don't get the appeal of the armpit person. I don't get the appeal of the armpit. I'm sure the person is lovely. I've been with guys who, like, they really want to put their face into my armpit every once in a while. I'm like, okay, if that's one of the reasons why you're here and that makes you happy, that's not going to twist my chaps. But someone who wants to tie me down and start whipping me with something, I like, I know where that's going to take more conversation, like,
well,
but it's not that's not a no, Don.
I'm not a no kind of person.
No,
I at the very least want to understand why you want to go there and because maybe I can understand. Maybe if you can make me understand it, I could share that.
Yeah. And I think that's, I don't know, a good approach to have, because I think there are things, like, for me personally, it's like, I wouldn't have, like, I'm not necessarily into it, but I'm willing to try it with that person because of whatever dynamic we have.
And if you can deliver something that is so, to the other person, is so hot that you kind of get off on how sexy you are to them, there's something big to that too.
There is something very big to that. I was going to say that there is a trick I have used, and I don't mind admitting this because it's a really good trick. You should steal it. And the armpit is a good example, right? Like, you can see how somebody could be totally into that. It may not be the raison d'etre, because usually they're best paired with someone who's really into that. But let's say it's something they like enough to ask for, or something that you notice they keep going back to. And it's not doing a lot for me. Now, do I take it off the table? No, of course not. But what I will look for is something I can do while they're doing that.
I was just going to say that. Because I was
there's probably something that I can do because there's a whole big body over there that I can do while they're doing that. And we can sort of achieve a symbiosis.
My trick for this is like, okay, whatever it is that the other person's doing that I'm not necessarily super into, maybe it's fine, maybe it's okay. Usually my request is, hey, if your space while you're doing this is next to me, why don't you just come over here and be on top of me? Also, if these two things can happen simultaneously, I can get a lot out of being underneath you rather than just kind of separated from you and having to kind of sit over there and wait for you to do a thing. Yeah, that is a huge difference maker for me.
Yeah,
I think that's a lovely idea to communicate, Michael, because like I'm totally fine with that, but it's not going to be my first idea to throw myself on top of somebody because of just the concerns of crushing them. If I know I'm invited and I know that's something they're excited by, then that's now on the table. And
Don, if he dies, he dies.
Yeah, absolutely. And he'll die happy, my friend. He will die happy.
I would like to put this to the group. Maybe I'm wrong. Has there been a chaser anyone has encountered that said, no, please don't get on top of me?
Absolutely not. I've never heard of such
I cannot imagine. I can't wrap my head around that.
No. I've had the opposite where it's just like I like where I'm just not willing and they just so desperately want their face sat on.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah. I have had the other reaction where I would love them on top of me. And maybe even for longer than they want to be on top of me because they don't find the position comfortable.
Yeah. And I'm conscious of that.
Yeah. And that's fine. Like if I am enjoying this. You're enjoying it to the sense that you're exploring a different sensation. You're not really into it. And I'm like, okay, good. Now we've done that. We can move on.
This is a total aside, but I have never been in that experience with somebody of your size, Dan. It's always been of guys that are much smaller than me, and I'm always terrified.
You know what? They want it more than I do. I got to tell you. The little guys
do.
Adore it.
They're often very upfront about that, but like, it's like we have to come out with a tap out system. Like if we don't have a safe word, then we're not okay.
Make it a tap out.
You could just literally tapping. Yeah, just if it's 5 rapid taps, then get the hell off.
Yeah, because they probably can't breathe.
I feel like
he got to 4 and then he just ran out of gas.
I feel like we should wrap up, but I think maybe a quick thing to touch on is
Nipples.
But nipple insecurity.
Oh yeah.
Because I think guys have a lot of hang-ups about, if their nipples, they think their nipples are too small or they're too big or, they're asymmetrical.
I've only run into that with fat guys that they're concerned that their areolas are too big or that they're too chest heavy, which I promise you is absolutely not a problem.
Not the case.
Yeah. Absolutely impossible.
Not complaining.
That's like, oh, you're so good looking. What a curse. But I have run into chubs who like feel like their chest isn't what it's supposed to look like because it's too big. Either the areolas are too big. I've never been. I think maybe one chub didn't have big areolas and he didn't like that.
I've talked to people that are they have the opposite insecurity of I don't feel like my moobs are big enough given either what I like about myself or how my distribution is or anything like that. Or like, and a lot of people like to lean into the whole like curvy fat guy thing, but it's like, yeah, but my upper chest is just not. So I've run into that insecurity, and there's, I don't try not to make yourself wrong for just how you are.
Yeah. Well, and if someone's in bed with you, they already know that. They already know what you're shaped like.
Yeah.
I'm curious if chasers have some of the same issues around nipples or chest or chestal regions.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would say the same. I would say
there's this, Michael, because you and I are not particularly stimulated there. I'm not sure we give it a lot of thought.
I give it thought in that I don't have, like, I'm not a tone, like Dan is very muscled and toned. I'm not I have a physique that I like, but I don't have like defined pecs at all. And so I've definitely, even going back to being a kid, like being self-conscious of taking off my shirt, going to the pool, nipples was one of the reasons. Like, I don't
nipples or chest.
Kind of both. I mean, yeah, but I would say chest, I guess, more so. Just like not having what a quote unquote man's chest should look like in terms of like a Disney prince, like, you know, like Aladdin has no nipples and is just like the square
cut pecs,
you know,
yes.
So like that is definitely an insecurity of mine.
And I can definitely see that in Chasers.
My best friend in high school had those pecs. Like naturally, he didn't work out, he didn't exercise, didn't do anything. And he was so insecure about them. Like he thought they were too flat.
You fool.
You didn't know what you had.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I don't think we have a tip today.
No tips, just nips.
Just Don, what do we got for?
Well, I did bring
bits?
a nip bit.
Let me just
thank God.
So we have various nipple questions from around the world. Let us begin with here's a very broad general question. Which group has the most varied nipple sizes and shapes? 1, men. 2, women. 3, people that were born intersexed. Or 4, people born during the summer months.
What?
Well, clearly the summer months.
One of these groups has more variation in nipple sizes.
It's got to be summer months. That's what I'm going for. Final answer.
I'm going, I don't know. Well, summer months, I feel like just because there's more people than any, like, because it encompasses so many groups.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, summer months. I like that assessment. Okay.
And what was yours, Dan?
Summer months.
Okay, we're unanimous on the summer months.
Yeah.
And you guys always follow Trevor, and that was a mistake this time around. The answer is in fact women. And this is an interesting thing. So this actually this is one of those iceberg questions. So women, by and large, have much more variation in nipple size and shapes than men, which is an evolutionary weirdness. There's something there that we don't understand. Apparently, when you see more variation in size and shapes and things, it generally means that it's less important biologically speaking, right? That it can be whatever shape and it won't matter, right? But the truth is, men's nipples being so uniform in general is it would say, according to this law, that their size is important, right? And it's not. So there's this evolutionary question backwards as to why men's nipples are so uniformly shaped in general, as opposed to women's, when women's are more important and therefore should be more uniform.
That is strange.
Yeah. It's just an interesting question. So we've got a little bit of a biology question here. So when you look at the nipple, right, there are lots of little parts of the nipple. And one of those parts is if you look around the ring of the edge of the nipple, you have all these little bumps, right? The question is, what the hell are those little bumps and why are they bumpy? Okay, 1, they are sweat glands that get naturally engorged when next to the nipple. They are hair follicles who have lost the hairs due to friction, usually. They are glands that produce an anti-chapping oil. Or 4, they're actually non-functional milk glands that develop around the edge of the nipple.
Oh, my.
So I thought I knew the answer to this, and it was none of those. So I'm lost.
Ooh. So you're going to get to give one additional answer at the end of this, and we'll find out what you believed those bumps were.
Well, I think I learned a fact about nipples that I thought was about those bumps, but I think it's just a separate fact unrelated to the bumps.
Okay.
I'm torn between the chafing and milk glands.
So hair follicles and milk glands?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to go with hair follicles.
Hair follicles. That's my guess too.
Okay, we got 2 for hair follicles. Dan?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with hair follicles.
Oh my God, you guys are going as a flock this time.
Yeah.
Which means no one can win because you're all wrong again. These things are actually called, I did not write down the name of these, so never mind. They are glands that produce an oil that prevent chapping and keep the glands at the top of the nipple, that the milk glands, lubricated. So it is actually an oil producing gland. There you go. All right. Our final question of the day. You know, we're not going to do a nipple episode and not have something about the supernatural on here. Okay. So European witch hunters used to think that people who had a third nipple were witches.
Yes.
What connection did they think a third nipple had to the supernatural?
Oh, dear.
1, it was Eve's nipple marking them as a traitor to God. 2, it was supposed to be their own mother's teat that they had swallowed as part of their pact to Satan. 3, it was where imps and devils could conveniently take sips of the witch's blood, you know, for snacking. Or 4, there actually was never a nipple test. The nipple test was a myth.
I'm going to go with 4, actually.
Yeah.
I think there are so many more horrible, torturous tests to put women through that the nipple, I don't know that they would have even gotten that far.
Yeah. Like, are you breathing? You're a witch.
They wouldn't talk about nipples. Like that, it's just like too risque of a thing to be like, and she had a third nipple. Because even just like acknowledge the existence of a third nipple acknowledges 2 nipples, and like it's just too much. It's too much.
Well, I kind of agree with you, Trevor, but for a different reason. The idea being that if you report, like, you know, Goody Proctor is a witch. I saw her third nipple. You what? How do you know they have a third nipple? So I'm going with it wasn't a thing.
Okay. We got 3 answers for nothing. Unified guessing. This is not a great strategy, people, because it leaves all of you with 1 point this time around, because that is not the correct answer.
Oh, damn it.
What's the correct answer? Witches were magic little sippy cups that devils and imps would take sips out of through their nipples. So that third nipple made them a sippy cup for Satan.
Oh, honey, like you.
I saw Goody Proctor's third nipple getting sucked by the devil.
Exactly.
It was actually a famous witch test was to insert a needle into this third nipple.
Oh God!
And if there was pain, then they were human. If there was no pain, then it was a.
Well, that's a pretty easy test to fake. Thank God.
Yeah, but they would just say you were faking it. So.
Oh, naturally.
Well, Trevor, if our listeners have had some interesting experiences with nipples that they want to share with us, where could they do that?
Well, listener, we're on Instagram and Twitter as @BigFatGayPod. We're on Facebook as the Big Fat Gay Podcast. Leave us 5 stars there. Leave us 5 stars or a review on your preferred podcast platform. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/BigFatGayPod. See the articles we talked about at www.bigfatgaypod.com, baby. /baby. Maybe your third nipple is tingling. You feel something in the ether, and it's a little imp, but he's coming to get a sip. So
watch out.